Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by our first sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You all have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I am your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, for episode number 64. Episode number 64. I believe. I'm sorry. Episode number 64. The day is June 21st, year of our Lord 2023. We're going to get rocking and rolling here. I'm back from Florida. I appreciate all of you tuning in on Monday to the great Professor Penn. He's a very, very dear friend of mine. More like family, more like a father figure, right? Some people you meet and, God puts them in your life at a certain time for a certain purpose and a certain cause. And Professor Penn added a wealth of knowledge and a fantastic soundboard of historical experience, international experience, business experience, and rich history, historical understanding to help sort out these things. And I have a brain trust, a beautiful brain trust, as I'm sure you are starting to see through the podcast, whether it be the great Steve Bannon or Alex Jones or Jason Whitlock, my own dear friend AJ Barker, Chris Martinson, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, just great people that I'm able to speak with and talk to and bounce ideas off of. And I think every young politician, every young aspiring politician, or every young leader of men must have a counsel, So I appreciate you, tuning in to Professor Penn, who hosted the podcast on Monday. I want to say guest host, but he guest hosted the podcast on Monday, and that probably won't be the last time you see him guest host. Reason being, obviously, I was traveling this past weekend with my son for his 6th grade basketball team down in Fort Lauderdale. We went 2-2, a very big Nike national basketball tournament called Ballin' on the Beach. You can look it up on YouTube to see how intense the environment is and how good the players are. I was ejected from game 1 because I felt like the referees were not on their job, and that happens. I mean, you got a tournament that big. Sometimes the refs, they have to piece the refs together from all over the place, right? And it's just a huge tournament. I mean, the convention center is full of basketball courts. I think there's something like 50 courts going at one time. Just to that lets you know how big this deal is. But we went 2-2, and we won a huge double overtime game in the beginning of bracket play, which is a winner go home situation, and then shortly after, about 10 minutes after we walked off that court, we had to play another game with right away, turnaround, which is always tough, especially on young kids, especially on 6th graders. And, you already have to dig deep to win an overtime game and then a double overtime game. Even though the overtime is only 2 minutes, it feels like a lifetime. But to win a double overtime game and then go into another game, another full game 10 minutes later is a tough task for 12-year-olds. But anyway, it's a good trip altogether. I had fun. Flew to Fort Lauderdale, flew back. And that's why you saw the great Professor Penn. And I'm happy. I tuned in for the episode myself. I thought it was incredible. I thank Professor Penn for sharing some of his cultural history and some of his family history that lets you understand or lets you into the world of the Jewish culture, the true Jewish culture that, from the more orthodox and faithful perspective. Professor Penn obviously, talked about what makes him very unique as a Jewish man, having been baptized by a black woman in the city of Chicago, which just makes him, ultra unique. And he brings that kind of, charisma and personality to his own podcast. So if you're not subscribed there, I would encourage you to do so. Please go subscribe to the Professor Penn podcast, which you can find in my featured channel section on this page, on this channel. Thank you to Professor Penn. Also want to give a special thank you to the War Room, Grace Chong, Maureen Bannon, and the great Steve Bannon for continuing to stream the podcast live on their Getter page. War Room has built an incredible platform. They've built an incredible source of information, dialogue, conversation, rich political conversation that was censored by YouTube. I mean, let's just be honest. I first started watching War Room pandemic when the pandemic first broke out there in Wuhan. And I remember the coverage in War Room on War Room being many, many months before the pandemic ever even hit our shores. And it was right around, it was shortly after that YouTube decided that War Room was too dangerous or too much of a threat to be on their platform. So they, banished Steve Bannon to the realm of digital and social media obscurity. So they thought. Turns out the great Steve Bannon has much more viability, resonates much more with the American people and people all around the world than YouTube could have ever imagined. And then Getter was built, so now Getter has its own platform, and then Real America's Voice, and the game is on. The race is on to see how we can build an alternative economy, a patriot economy, which includes our own social media platforms such as Getter and Truth and Rumble, and the list goes on and on. So a special thank you to War Room and the entire War Room posse. Thank you to Alex Jones. Alex Jones is now giving us our own page on band.video. So we are mirroring all of the podcasts that you see on the YouTube channel on band.video. I think we're close to being caught up. You got to upload them, a few every day in order to not jam up the system. But I think we're getting close to being caught up. So we want to thank Alex Jones and his entire team, the entire InfoWars team for that. And last but not least, we have to thank the great Jason Whitlock and the fearless audience, everybody over there at the Blaze and everybody on Jason's team, all of the fearless contributors. Fearless is, if you're not subscribed to Fearless with Jason Whitlock, you're missing what I think is probably the most cutting edge conversation on the entire internet. And not just because Jason, not because I agree with Jason on many views, mostly Christian worldviews. It certainly is a bastion of Christian worldviews. It's also a bastion of uplifting men and encouraging men, to take their rightful role in society, and also specifically black men, as there are many black commentators or contributors on the show. It also is a very unbiased platform. I mean, it's an unbiased dialogue. Me and Jason have disagreements all the time, and Jason allows for people to disagree, and he brings people on the show who disagree with them, and I think that's great. Certainly not the caricature that's built or that's told about conservative media being this great echo chamber. So thank you to Jason and the entire Fearless team, the entire Fearless audience, the Fearless Army. We appreciate you. We appreciate your support here on this show and this podcast, and we hope to continue to grow. I believe we're being throttled on YouTube. We're getting a lot of emails. We're getting a lot of messages saying, I can't find you when I search the podcast or when I search your name. When your new episodes come out and the premieres, it's not coming up in my feed. And that doesn't surprise us. That doesn't shock us. I don't really think anything we've said on this podcast is that controversial, let alone a threat to national security or, deserving to be recognized by the Council for Domestic Terrorism and so on and so forth, the misinformation tribunals that are being formed in Silicon Valley through this new technocracy. I think everything we've said on this podcast thus far is not only verifiable, but it's quite easily verifiable by authoritative sources that many of the people in social media, big tech, Silicon Valley, the new technocracy control. Obviously there is a significant threat to the establishment for anybody who speaks the uncomfortable truth. And uncomfortable truth is not the same as lies. It's not the same as misinformation. It's not the same as saying something false. It's just uncomfortable. And that's what we strive to do here on Please Call Me Crazy. It's what we strive to do there on Fearless. It's what Alex Jones has strived to do his entire career, what Steve Bannon has picked up the baton and tried to do with War Room. And it's certainly what we're going to try and emulate and follow in the footsteps of with Free People Radio. Free People Radio as a platform, the Free People Radio, the YouTube channel, will be launching in the next couple of weeks. There you'll be able to find clips from all of the podcasts that come under our umbrella, as well as you'll be able to go to freepeopleradio.com and look at the join our patron platforms if you want to make cash donations or money donations to the movement of Free People Radio. And there'll be merchandise from each podcast will be held there. You'll have stuff from my podcast. You'll have stuff from Professor Penn's podcast. You'll have merchandise from more podcasts that are coming soon. One of them being the Last Renaissance podcast, which is going to be AJ Barker and myself once a week for about an hour. So we're filling the plate up. I mean, there's nothing more important than honest and rich dialogue, intellectual dialogue. And I think it's why I've been able to have relative success being on Jason and when I host on InfoWars and when I make appearances on War Room, because I'm not here with any agenda. I mean, sure, I have my beliefs, I have my worldview, I have the things that I would like to see happen in this great nation of ours, but my doing a podcast any podcast or being on the public stage in general is just to share my thoughts in the most genuine and authentic way possible. And many people reach out and are appreciative that my contribution to the conversation, to the dialogue, tends to be deep. You'll hear Jason Whitlock say that a lot. He calls me the deepest man on the show. I don't know. The great Delano Squires certainly gives me a run for my money. And Jason does as well. He likes to, he's a modest guy, and that's exactly what we all should strive to be. But Jason's fire starters go unheralded themselves as pretty deep intellectual analysis. But yeah, I mean, I do try to give the deepest insight I possibly can and let people think about things in a new way and just provide that, that dynamic in the conversation. It's so stale. I mean, just growing up the last 10 years, I've been an adult for 10 years, right? And that's probably not fair. I mean, I had a unique childhood, a unique upbringing, which caused me to grow up a lot earlier. So I would say I was probably an adult from like 14, 15, but legally I've been an adult. I consider being an adult 21 when you can drink and make the decision to get in a car and drive or not, legally. So I've been an adult for about 10 years now, and I just watched the conversation slowly, progressively get stale, and then eventually, as all things do after they stale out, erode, crumble, start to decay, start to sour. So that's all I'm here to do, and I'm happy to report that on the audio platform we are, quickly approaching 1 million downloads. That will be a huge milestone. I never really, when we got the podcast started after I was censored and had a bunch of hit pieces done on me during my congressional race against Ilhan Omar. I decided that I was going to build my own microphone, my own stage, my own podium to be able to talk to the people consistently as I continue to explore the possibility of different political offices. And that's exactly what we've done. And I'm happy that it's moving in the right direction and that we're having some success. And most of all, I'm happy to see the feedback. I think despite us being shadow banned or being fought against by the algorithms of YouTube and all the other big tech oligarchs, when people do get to hear me, when people do get to, see, for themselves what I'm all about and the things that I say and my approach and the way that I view things, they give great feedback. So we appreciate that. We appreciate everybody out there who bears with me and understands some of the long-winded, deep intellectual considerations or analysis or thoughts. We appreciate that. And ultimately, I think we have to have people who are going to be serious about themselves, number one, and serious enough about themselves, take themselves serious enough to share deep, thoughtful insights. And I don't mean woke insights, I mean really what it is, what's really going on, what we're looking at, what we're looking at and how we need to think about it so that we can know how to act and how to respond. So, with that being said, this episode is going to be a quick in and out. We got the great AJ Barker for Friday. Again, he was back in the studio, and he and I gave some compelling. I thought it was compelling just sitting there. We recorded it already, just for everybody who's out there wondering. We had some compelling dialogue about Vivek Ramaswamy and the prospect of his presidential candidacy versus Donald Trump, and then ultimately Donald Trump versus the entire field, and then Donald Trump respective to many of his other presidential counterparts of the last 100 years, and how to look at Donald Trump and how to think about what Donald Trump's presidency really represented. And I think A.J. Barker gave a very compelling pitch for the great Donald Trump with all his many flaws. And then we all are flawed. We all are flawed. I certainly am flawed. He who is without sin cast the first stone. And there's been times where I was critical of Donald Trump, not for the reasons or not in the way that the woke media and the corporatocracy are critical of him. I was actually critical in the opposite direction. I didn't think he was extreme enough. but you live and you learn, and I also understand with all humility what it must be like to be the president of the United States. I know this from being an athlete. I mean, if you go sit in a barbershop or you go sit at your local watering hole and you listen to people who've had a few whiskeys talk about sports or basketball, particularly the professional basketball, the NBA, which we just crowned the Denver Nuggets as the champ, as I predicted the Denver Nuggets would end up winning. Everybody's conversation about it, everybody's analysis is so it's so easy. It's so easy to have an opinion about what a coach should have done, or what a player should have done, or what a team general manager should have done, or what the ownership should have done, or what a player's agent should have done. I mean, there's all of this analysis. I mean, we have an entire entertainment industry that's driven on analysis, and it's sports just like politics just like sports. The two are very similar in that way, and this sort of disillusionment from the onlookers to be able to see or hear about a situation or a game or an event or a global conflict or some bill legislation and go, they should have done this, they should have done that. It's much more difficult than people would think. Certainly politics, certainly in a place like DC, that is the swamp of all swamps. I mean, we have a great nation here. We have a great foundation in our nation. We have great philosophical ideas that help birth the nation. But I don't like when people say this is the greatest country in the world. We're good. You're only good or bad by comparison. So with that being said, we're certainly, leaps and bounds ahead of other places. But I don't like it because it's kind of negligent around just how corrupt our country is, especially in the political. And I think sometimes people toe the line between, admiring and giving thanks and being appreciative of what our nation is as a means or a scapegoat to look away from the corruption. I don't like that. This country is very, very corrupt, and mostly it's with our elected officials. So, for Donald Trump to have to navigate all of the things he had to navigate in his first presidency, I don't have sympathy for it, but I certainly understand that things are much more complicated than any of us on the outside would ever understand, which I think is one of the single greatest reasons why he would be well suited to go at it again in 2024. You need 4 years to figure out where all the bones are buried, to figure out where all the classified loopholes and things are laying. You need some time to get acclimated, especially if you're not a career politician. I mean, if you're Barack Obama and you were brought up from a seed to a weed and then into a huge garden and then eventually an entire field of crop. Yeah, it'd be quite easy for you to navigate politics, right? Because that's what you were groomed to do. and the people around you, even furthermore, the people around you, your lifelong friendships, your lifelong alliances, your lifelong associations are all geared toward how politics work. And not just how politics work in this sort of, even-handed way, obviously. It's how to maintain the corrupt status quo. And Donald, here comes Donald Trump with a few business associates and the network that he's built through his business dealings and his real estate, him being a real estate mogul and whatnot. And there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve. And I think people have to understand that. I mean, this guy is not. And sure, you could say that business is politics and politics is business as well. And sure, there's a lot of crossover. Especially, I would believe in the real estate business. And talking about one of the few industries that's heavily involved with zoning commissions and all kinds of things that are city oriented. And there's no city in the United States, maybe in the world, like the great New York City, which has become a shithole now. And I'm sure part of Donald Trump's impetus to get involved in politics was watching the decay of New York City. But New York City is I mean, it's a different level of city politics, right? It's a whole different level of city politics. I mean, we call Minneapolis, I don't know if people know this, but it's called the Mini Apple, right? And you got the Big Apple and you got the Mini Apple. It's just a fun nickname. But part of the reason is because we have one of the biggest communities of Fortune 500 companies per capita, right? So we have a significant corporate community here in the city of Minneapolis, the great city of Minneapolis. And then because Apple is in our name, we're the Mini Apple, right? Okay. But the city politics here aren't non-existent. They just can't compare to New York City, right? They can't compare to New York City. So, I think Donald Trump's entry into American politics, Donald Trump's entry or arrival on the scene came with a significant learning curve, and he had to find out that D.C. is the swamp of all swamps, not only for the people that are there, but what it does to people who get there, what it does to people once they're there. And many of the people around him who betrayed him, where are they now? Who are they now? Michael Cohen, the list goes on and on. They're rats. I mean, that's all. Their testimony isn't worth the paper that it's written on. It's not worth its weight in ink. Because, it's just so clear that all of them were once completely behind Donald Trump. And it says two things about him. If they were completely behind him and they knew he was corrupt, then that means they were behind him for their own selfish ambitions, which kind of disqualifies their testimony. But if they only testified after they became cross with him for some reason, which most of them that is the case, then the motivation to be dishonest and to frame Donald Trump as this bad person becomes all too obvious. And that's just what happens for a lot of powerful people, for a lot of very visible people publicly. It happens to a lot of athletes. You have a lot of scorned women that come after the fact, after a relationship doesn't go the way they want, and try and smear the name of a male athlete and so on and so forth. You don't see it in women's sports as much because there's kind of this unspoken agreement amongst men that if a woman does you wrong, or if a woman betrays you, or if a woman breaks your heart, or if a woman lies to you, you don't really want other men to know about that. I mean, that's not something that men go around and bragging about, mostly because you're not going to get any sympathy from other men for doing so. So there's no real benefit to it. And if anything, you look weak, and other men who may be competing with you in some field, in a given field, see it as a sign of weakness, that you were duped by some woman, or that you were treated, poorly by some woman. They'll even, in some cases, in real corporate espionage, and corporate espionage is a real thing. In some cases, they'll even use, broken relationships and things like that against you, certainly to tarnish your reputation, but otherwise as well. And same is true of politics. So women are mostly the progenitors of that type of malicious gossip and things like that, because there's an industry, there's an entire ecosystem of sympathy for women who who want to smear and tarnish the reputation of men and other women sometimes. In some cases, certainly more behind the scenes, is kind of an unwritten rule that women shouldn't bash women in the public, but behind the scenes, women's reputation tarnishment of other women is profound. And not only that, if a woman wants to tarnish the reputation of a man and another woman is the collateral damage, she won't hesitate. We've seen that countless times. No story greater than Norma McCorvey, who was the key witness in Roe v. Wade. Norma McCorvey's story was that she she lied and claimed to have been raped in order to justify getting an abortion or having fighting against the law, the outlaw of abortion there in Texas. And she lied and said she was raped by 4 people, one of which was a woman. And so she was willing to take this woman down and potentially send her to jail for a better part of her natural born life in order to achieve her political goals, or in order to kill a child, or her own child. So all of that is food for thought. And I say all that again to circle back to my point that Donald Trump had a lot of people around him that he obviously now knows he shouldn't have trusted, but that happens to all of us. That happens to all of us everywhere. And what I really dislike is, oh, he's such a poor judge of character, right? I mean, we're all a very poor judge of character. All of us. All of us. I mean, show me a guy who says he has this profound ability to judge people's character, and I'll show you somebody who just doesn't have that many relationships, who doesn't have that big of a network, who doesn't have that significant of stakes riding on the things that he's involved with. Because as we know, business, money, and politics bring out the worst in people, and that's not by accident. That's by design. That's by a grand design, a design far beyond the physical world, a design that has a metaphysical steering wheel to it and a metaphysical captain, and his name would be Satan. And Satan is far, far more powerful than anybody can possibly imagine. And I think we take it for granted. I think a lot of what has come from the 501c3 milquetoast Christianity, drive-through Christianity, is this disregard for the power of Satan, and this idea that if we just pray and are faithful, that Satan can't harm us. Nothing could be further from the truth, actually, and you'll hear more about that type of dynamic in AJ Barker and I's conversation on Friday evening, just talking about the implications of the metaphysical on the political, which is interesting. Many people like to keep the political and the metaphysical, or the religious and faith and God separate. Right? The federal government benefits the most from that, but many people like to do it as well in common conversation and common parlance, because hey, religion is a sticky topic and politics are a sticky topic. So why blend the two and make it even more sticky? We on this show, and certainly on Fearless, and I think Alex as well, and even Steve, have all four, sort of at one time leaned into this idea that we can't discuss the political without the spiritual. The spiritual's way upstream from the political. Culture is upstream from politics, and the spiritual is upstream from the culture. So you can't talk about one without the other, really. So Donald Trump is not without flaw. It's not without flaw. But I think certain people at certain times, we don't live in a perfect world. There's nothing perfect about humanity. We are fallen. We are flawed. We've been flawed since the beginning. And that trajectory has a momentum to it. And I hope people can just visibly close their eyes and see Adam and Eve are the first man in the sins of early human beings, and how it snowballs. And there's a momentum. There's a sequence of events that unfolds, cause and effect, and some of it is physical, some of it is psychological, some of it is spiritual, mind, body, and soul. But there's a momentum to our flaws, and Donald Trump and his flaws and his mistakes are the product of many people's flaws and mistakes. The same with the liberals and Democrats, same with our opposition. It's the shortcomings of humanity are the shortcomings of the collective, no doubt. Are they the shortcomings of individuals? Can you abnegate the individual culpability? No, no. But I love when Mandela and those guys in South Africa said, well, wait a minute, truth commissions. Truth commissions. One, we want to know the full extent and scheme of this plot. We want to know the truth of what you did and what role you played, but also, and not just for the understanding, but also to acknowledge that, hey, when things get going downhill, they go downhill fast. They slide downhill fast and stuff gets out of control. And it gets out of control quick, but it stays out of control long. And that's the thing I think is hard for people to wrestle with, especially when we talk about political matters, is all of these agencies, all of these administrative state, agencies and institutions that we've entrusted so much of our freedom and our American citizenship to. Yeah, they got out of control pretty quick. They got out of control pretty quick. And if you don't do something radical to change the trajectory of it, they stay out of control for quite a long time. And the military industrial complex, the central banking cartel, the puppet politicians, the corporatocracy, the people on Wall Street, they've been out of control. I mean, we can go right back to World War II, but you could even go back to the inception of the Fed, the creature on Jekyll Island, and the whole inception of the Federal Reserve and the scam that it really is, the economic and financial Ponzi scheme that it really is. We were out of control then. And the moral hazard that ensued from being out of control and trying to keep up with being out of control just eventually deteriorates into pure chaos, mania, debauchery, and wickedness. So it takes something drastic, but whatever that drastic thing is not going to come from flawless people. Whatever those incremental steps are that bring us back to some resemblance of sanity and reason and logic is not going to come without flaw. The people who do it are not going to come without flaw. And we can even look at the Democrats and let me offer this olive branch, even though Lord knows we wouldn't get an olive branch from their side. They want to round us Christians up and would kill us if they were able to, if they were legally afforded the ability to do so. I think many leftists, far leftist progressives, and some of these radical liberals would actually round us Christians up and just shoot us. That's what I think. If they could get the military to sign off on that, they would round us up and shoot us. Marxist, communists, commonality. Actually, that's what the Marxists and communists have done multiple times. They just round up their opposition and shoot them. And then they shoot the other Marxists and communists who helped them round up the opposition when it's all over. That's an interesting, backstabbing pattern that we see with the Marxists and the communists. A forewarning to all you liberals out there who trust these Marxist, communist, Satanist elites. But I want to extend the olive branch because there's something to be said for the points that Democrats have made. Some of the points that Democrats have made. It's just that by and large, what is felt, what is believed at the grassroots level, and the agenda that is being sought out through that grassroots energy are not aligned. They're not aligned at all. In some places they are aligned. Don't get me wrong. I mean, one thing you have to tip your hat to the liberal establishment for is that they've been able to create this vertical between the thought leadership and these liberal Marxist, communist, globalist think tanks and disseminate it down to the bottom, to the grassroots. They have a sort of top-down ideological framework and ideological synthesis. So, you got to tip your hat to them. But I think there are a lot of liberals and Democrats who get a few memes here on Instagram and they hear about certain types of injustices and think, hey, that's not right. That's just not right. And some of it, in fact, a lot of it isn't right. A lot of what built this country, a lot of what went into building many of the institutions that we have now is patently wrong. It's patently immoral. It's patently corrupt and dishonest. The problem with it is the attempt to tear those institutions down, the attempt to gain control and say they want to reform those institutions is not intended to bring you more prosperity, to bring you more of anything that has to do with well-being, as the great Professor Penn would call it. It has nothing to do with that. They just want the power, and they're willing to spin any narrative that they need to in order to achieve and to grab hold of that power. And once they do, we will see very quickly that all of the things they actually built the support of the populace on were never really staples of their worldview, were never really cornerstones of their agenda. And the telltale sign is going to be climate change. I mean, climate change at the global, when it comes to the global scale, I mean, when it comes to domestic politics, national politics, and, national politics. When it comes to national politics, the best wedge issues to use are race, the difference between people's skin color, the difference between people's reproductive system, genitalia, the difference between men and women, and the difference between sexual orientation, LGBTQ, feminism, racism, LGBTQism, feminism, racism. You got to give it ism because the LGBTQ has become an ism quite clearly, but racism and feminism. And those are the best tools to use for national policy. But at the global scale, it's climate change, baby. Oh, it's climate change and it's technology. And it's the merger, it's climate change as the narrative, and then it's technology as it's climate change as the Trojan horse, and it's technology as the troops buried in the barrels and the bowels of the Trojan horse. And really, it's not in the bowels of the Trojan horse. I mean, technology's kind of riding right on top of that thing, right? The artificial intelligence is riding on top of climate change like Seabiscuit. So, climate change is going to be the one that really shows you, hey, this has nothing to do with saving the planet. And it certainly has nothing to do with saving humanity. And I don't quite understand how the climate change narrative has gone from we need to save the planet and leave the planet for our children to humans are the actual problem, and we need to just save the planet for the planet's sake. We need to save the animals for the animals' sake. It's us, it's humans that are the problem. We're the disease. I even heard Joe Rogan one time kind of play around with that idea that humans are the bacteria, right? The bacteria of the planet's fucking moronic is what it is. It's completely anti-human, and it's a complete submission to this sort of technocratic fourth industrial worldview. And Joe, I think, understands the fourth industrial revolution and the dangers of technology and AI and all of the big tech oligarchs that have now lined up against him and everything he's doing on his platform. I love the Rogan podcast. I'd be lying if I didn't say that Joe Rogan is part of the inspiration for me to do my own podcast, because he is. He's inspired an entire generation to podcast. We all be dishonest if we didn't give him that credit. However, there are some gaping holes in his worldview, in my opinion, and this idea that this eventual merger with technology for human beings is both inevitable and advantageous is one of those gaping holes I would completely disagree with him on. But other than that, I appreciate that he's continued to give contrarian people an opportunity to speak when the mainstream media was never going to let some of these people have 15 minutes, let alone 3 hours, to tell you exactly what it is. I mean, and there's been some classics, and I don't even mean just from conservatives there's been some liberals that have gone on Joe Rogan's podcast and given us some classics. If you want one, the man who just declared for president, Dr. Cornel West, he had an incredible podcast with Joe Rogan. And everybody has their own little corner of the fight, and everybody has their little team, and everybody has the little idiosyncrasies and all the little worldviews that make up their little team's banner. But much of that is fluff. I mean, much of that is bullshit. Much of it is probably the deep state and the security state running people against each other. and getting people hung up and caught up on all of the bullshit wedge issues, the WWE politics, while they steal our money. And they steal our money first as a predicate to stealing our rights. And that's why when you think about $1.5 trillion here, $1.5 trillion there, really nothing to this money that we print from the Fed, what we're really saying is that our government, that our government owns our very existence. We all agree to live in a global corporate community, as a sort of global market, this free market enterprise, or global capitalism, is lack of a better term. And then you let your government steal your money or misrepresent the value of your citizenship through the Federal Reserve. You, my friend, are a fucking slave. That's just the reality. Sorry to say it. But that slavery is just the start, because once you're a slave, I mean, what the hell do any of your other rights mean? Nothing. Right. So we'll print as much fucking money as we want to. You won't oppose us. You won't march on the Fed. You won't do a protest on the Fed to save your life. I don't care if you're MAGA. I don't care if you're BLM. You motherfuckers never make it to the Fed. And that's not by accident, right? It's not quite by accident that we get hung up on these cultural wedge issues, which I'm not saying aren't important issues. I mean, Roe v. Wade is an important issue. Talk about the morality and the political becoming spiritual and vice versa. Whew. Roe v. Wade the stakes don't get any bigger than that. 70 million babies in 60 years, 400 million there in China. Whew. Stakes are pretty high. But at the same time, the money scam that's being run, I mean, there's enough energy around Roe v. Wade. You got your people on both sides, and some people say it this way, some people say that way. Some people want to give birth to kids and then kill them after they come out of the fucking womb. Shit is getting crazy now. Some people are giving babies up to to human trafficking, and they're mining and buying the organs and organ trafficking, and stem cells and fucking placenta, all kinds of fucking crazy shit. I don't know. Shit that would make your stomach just turn over a million times. I get it. Everybody's got a side on that issue. It's a huge wedge issue. It's not an unimportant issue. But there's like no real energy around this economic and financial Ponzi scheme. There's like a non-existent energy around this Ponzi scheme. And the debt ceiling was a great example. The debt ceiling was a great example. People should have been out in the streets protesting that the government signed a deal to steal your money. I mean, they just said, we're going to take it from you. And if you have a problem with it, then do something. That's what they said. Do something about it. Just straight gangster. Bully. I mean, DC is as gangster as it gets. We in the suits that you elected to represent you say that the money tap is going to not only stay on, but be unlimited. It's going to be unlimited. And you dare not oppose us. If you oppose us, well, better get you some F-16s, right? That's Joe Biden. That's what Joe Biden's really saying. If you think you're going to oppose the system, if you think you're going to change the corrupt status quo, better invest in some F-16s. And you can't really invest in F-16s. Number one, you can't own F-16s. But number two, the amount of money it would cost to make F-16s is only an amount of money that you could print in perpetuity in a sort of fiat Ponzi scheme, right? Because nobody has the money to buy $1 million fighter jets. More than $1 million. I think some of them are like $10 million or something like that, maybe even more. I'm not very familiar with the money or with the cost of an F-16, partly because I think the whole fucking cost is a scam. I mean, I think the whole currency system is a fucking scam. I'm just going to tell you guys. I said it before. I don't really think there's a debt crisis. I don't really think there's a financial crisis. The real crisis is that our leaders have a moral crisis. They have a crisis of being fucking honest. They have a crisis of righteousness and forthrightness and honesty. That's the real crisis. The crisis is a crisis of leadership. The economy is just a product. It's just fruit from the same poisonous tree. Because when you really get down to things, the undoing of capitalism, the undoing of the American way, American citizenship, the power and strength of America's, economy and all these other things, everything that is America, the undoing is going to be the Marxist narrative that rightly identifies that there are always these people in your society, usually elites, who coagulate power so that they can maintain and control resources and price gouge the people on those resources so that they can live some weird lavish lifestyle, which ultimately in some ways, probably not by coincidence, unironically, turns into some sycophantic, satanic, eyes wide shut freak show. And that's what we see with a lot of elites. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein is a great example of that, and many other people who were implicated in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. And you got a bunch of fucking freaks, right, at the top there. Because, I mean, what else do you do? Once you have that much power and you have that much money and your whole world is built on basically maintaining that power and that money, there's no real survival instinct in that level. Remember now, I'm not talking about your middle market entrepreneurs. I'm not talking about a guy who had a vision, who was creative and went and dug it out of the side of a mountain and created a business that's sustainable and makes him somewhat individually well off. I'm talking about tycoons, titans of industry, billionaires, 10 billionaires, 100 billionaires, these type of people. And not just those type of people, because in some ways, I think those billionaires get thrown in front of us as a distraction because the real money is entrusted across families, very wealthy families. And these people don't really disclose their net worth. We see that with the Saudis. I mean, why the fuck would the Saudis need to disclose their net worth? Why do they need to let you know how rich they are? They have the liquid gold. We don't give a fuck what some citizen thinks about where we rank in the all-time list of liquid assets, right? I mean, that's sort of like an American businessman affectation. It's like, I got to brag about how big my company is, how many fucking employees I have, and what the annual revenue is, and blah 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 blah. It's like a fucking jerk off for 401k boomers. First it was, and then it was the generation that came after them that was trying to live up to their boomer fathers who had these companies and so on and so forth. And the measurement of being a middleman, because really, when you got a loan with the fucking bank, when you got a credit line with the fucking bank, you're really just a manager. You don't own shit. The bank owns you. And as much as you're leveraged with the fucking bank, which is the fucking Fed, you're still a fucking slave. I don't care if you got $1 million in $1 million credit line. I don't care if you got $50 million in the bank. If you're leveraged on a loan that goes through the bank and goes to the Fed, you're a fucking slave. And this is how many of you don't really understand that even at the highest level, some of these elite businessmen who they show you on Forbes, Fortune 100 or the 30 under 30, all these fuckers are being fitted for a straitjacket, right? And they'll go to them in some private room and tell them, this is how it works, my friend. You actually think you own your company. You don't own your company. You're managing your company. We see the value of your company. And in order to extract the value of that company, you're going to run it like this. And part of you running it like this now includes the corporate equality index. I know I just went off and rambled there for a long. I hope you enjoy rants like that. I strung that together. Some people call that stream of consciousness, but I don't necessarily think so. This is how my mind works. Please call me crazy. Call me crazy. And that's how it really works, right? And we need people who really understand how it works. I know you may think of me or hear me and go, this kid's a fucking nut job. But understand, the people who run your society, the people who run this country, the people who make decisions that impact the circumstance of your daily life in a major, major way, their minds work like that. And the reason why their minds work like that is because they've been fortunate enough not to have to think about the day-to-day shit they make sure you have to think about. Well, me, I'm just a little bit of a wild child. I'm a little bit of a rebel. I'm a little cavalier when it comes to what I decided to use my mind for. I wouldn't get bogged down in trying to become a 30 under 30 on the Forbes list and build some new tech platform that's going to have $1 billion valuation so that all the people in Silicon Valley and on Wall Street will be impressed with me and put my name in the magazine as some up and coming entrepreneur. I said, Jerk off. Lot of young, talented people, lot of young, innovative and people with great ingenuity get caught in that trap, and slowly but surely they end up the same way many of our DC politicians do. You get to the swamp, you get to the party, and you have all these visions about how you're going to change the world, and then some people very high up sit you down in a room and they tell you this is how it really works, kid. This is how it really works. And I think Donald Trump has tried to fight those people. I'm surely trying to fight those people. I was sat down in a room in the NBA by the speakers on behalf of the institution and said, hey, man, this is how it works. I remember when I sat down with the general counsel of former Houston Rockets owner Leslie Alexander. His name was Michael Goldberg. And Michael Goldberg was speaking on behalf of Leslie in the Houston Rockets organization, because Daryl Morey, who was heavily involved in the Hong Kong and NBA deal, and he said free Hong Kong, and Hong Kong, and that made the NBA cross. He came back and apologized really quick because he's a fucking sellout. His first impulse was to tell the truth because he's a little weird like that, and I respect that he was willing to say it. But then he turned right around and apologized because the NBA came to him and said, this is how shit really works. Don't ever fucking jeopardize our relationship with China again. China's going to pay your bills one day. It's going to pay all of our bills one day. And then there's a reason why. there's a strange alliance between the anti-Jews, as Professor Penn alluded to on Monday, and the CCP. And most of it is just radical materialism. And it's not real difficult. They don't believe in God. That's one part. Secular, so they believe in science. Science and the state is the highest authority, and it's a pride thing. It's an ego thing. It's a greed thing. But anyway, Michael Goldberg speaking on behalf of Daryl Morey in this meeting that I'm having about mental health and mental health policy, and I get threatened by the organization. They say, look, you can either report to the D League. It was the D League at the time. Now it's the G League. You can report to the D League. You can quit going on about putting this mental health policy down on paper, putting it in writing, or we can take your contract to arbitration. And that's where I think people don't understand how America really works. I do, because I was in that situation. I've actually been there. I've been in the seat. But there's an entire legal sphere that really comes to dominate the way things are done in this country. And those lawyers, those black suits, those judges, those power players from the legal side really shape the direction that things go in. Basically, what the NBA was telling me was, who the fuck are you? You're 21 years old, punk kid from little rural Minnesota. Where if you're not on a boat or a canoe up there in the lakes and fishing or whatnot, then you're out there in western Minnesota, cropping the corn or whatever the case may be, farming southern Minnesota. And if you're really a special breed, you're up there in northwestern Minnesota on the Iron Range. Who the fuck are you, kid? Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck do you know? This is New York City, motherfucker. This is New York City. This is the Big Apple. This is the city of deals, and this is the city of deals and handshakes. We know the arbiters, the people who are gonna do the arbitration for your contract. If it goes to arbitration, we actually know those people. And this is what Michael Goldberg said to my face in front of other people. I mean, he didn't threaten me alone like, hey, let me tell you how this really works. He said in front of 3 other people, let me tell you how this shit really works. The arbitrator who's going to decide on whether or not you get the money that you're guaranteed from this contract, because we don't give a fuck about mental health. That arbitrator, I know him personally, and he feels the same way about mental health that I do. Fuck off. In the retrospect, I'm not saying there's not a fuck off that's necessary when it comes to the way mental health is being driven in the narrative. Certainly it's been weaponized and hijacked. But it's funny that now the same establishment that told me to fuck off when it comes to mental health is going to use mental health and psychology to justify why they need to teach your kids that they can cut their penis off and become a woman, or send child protective services to protect the mental health and stability of your child. Maybe that was a rant too hard to follow. I don't know. This is the way the world really works. This is the way the world, and this is the way they really think. And I've been there before, so I understand. I understand what Donald Trump is going through. And the more and more they come after him, the more and more I come to be sympathetic to the position he's in. And it's not as some false idol. It's because I've been there. I know what it feels like for your legal advisors, your attorney or management or business advisor, whoever the fuck it is, come into the room and say, look, you're right, but so what? Being right doesn't matter. I mean, we live in a country, we live in a nation, we live in a culture, we live in a society that has accepted that just being right isn't enough. Telling the truth isn't enough. It's not about the truth. It's about what you can prove. I mean, what kind of weird, dishonest, sycophantic ass society is that? What kind of populace are we? It's not about the truth. It's about perception. Perception is reality. What the fuck are we talking about? What did we lay the groundwork for? And I say it that way because we could talk about wokeism now, but let's identify what laid the groundwork. These 501c3, 401k boomers, you guys got caught up in these ideas and you repeated them like they were fucking doctrine, like they were dogma. You treated them like they were dogma. Perception is reality. No, perception is not fucking reality. Perception was reality when your little marketing and PR firms were trying to figure out how to sell fucking Camel cigarettes to the American people and make it look cool when really it was cancerous. That was perception is reality. And now we're going to cut little boys' penises off and give them fucking hormone blockers. And now that perception is going to be reality. You see how the slippery slope works? You see the moral hazard that is now grown out from this corporatocracy. This was the predicate, right? And the Fed was the predicate for that. I mean, we have these bank loans. We have, we have boards of directors on these initial public offerings. We're going public with these companies. You got a board of directors. So you got stockholders and shareholders. And these people's money, their investment has to be top priority. It doesn't matter about the morals or ethics. It's just business. It's just business is another fucking crooked ass saying. When you hear people say it's just business, you should really start to question them. And I'm gonna have a long talk with the great Professor Penn about that phrase, because it's just business is a fucking problem. But I get it, because the great Professor Penn, he's a boomer, right? And when he says it, he means that this is the way the world is actually operating. And I tend to agree with that. But the problem with it is you got a bunch of woke 20 to 30-year-old liberals that are thinking to themselves, the hell with the way it's been working. It's not been working at all. And there's some truth to that. And that's what A.J. Barker spoke to about the difference between the millennial generation and the boomer generation and the reign of boomer justice and this inability to deal with justice and punishment as a consequence of World War II and that justice fatigue of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that the boomers are plagued by. And so, the Marxists were really smart, because the Marxists said, ooh, this narrative is going to run dry quick. And when this narrative runs dry, we're going to be right there to pick up the pieces. We're going to be right there to pick up the stragglers. We're going to be right there to pick up all the people who are disaffected with the way this thing is working. And in fact, the people are going to be so fed up, we'll actually be able to just repackage and rebrand the corrupt shit they're already doing and just tell the people that we're doing something different, and they'll believe us. They'll believe it. These motherfuckers actually believe Jean-Pierre when she gets up there and says, there's no such thing as somebody else's child. Everybody's child is all of our children. They actually believe when Kamala Harris says half of the shit she says, or Joe Biden says half the shit she said. I don't really even think they believe it, but they need to believe it. They want to believe it. Why? Because the corrupt people that came before were so damn corrupt that we, in the millennial generation, a lot of them, a lot of the woke liberals, you can see it in their face. They just need a sense of security and honesty and something to believe in. Well, they had God stripped from them, right? Just can't believe in that. There's no faith in that. The entire idea of faith itself is obscured. So what to believe in? Well, you have to believe in the state. If you live in a society, if you live in a civilization, if you live in an organized community of any fashion, if you can't believe in God, if you can't believe in something metaphysical and something beyond the physical world and something eternal and something supernatural, all you have left is the highest organization of the natural, of the physical world. And the highest organization for human beings is government. Governance, that which presides over you and adjudicates all matters and disputes. And that's what we have. We have a statist culture. We have a culture that wants to believe in the government in either direction. And nothing could be more imprudent. Nothing could be more weak. Weakness is what it is, which is why they hate people like me, which is why the NBA wanted to silence me, which is why if you go look up my Wikipedia, they'll still make it seem like my entire identity is based around a fear of flying that was greatly exaggerated, which is why you'll scroll down and look at my political and they'll say, hey, this guy's a right-wing extremist, just like they'll do Donald Trump. Just like they'll do Steve Bannon or Alex Jones or Jason Whitlock or Kyrie Irving or Kanye West or Christina Caramo or Carrie Lake. Pick somebody. Pick somebody. You can go down the list. And the question isn't what's going to happen to us. We all know our fate. We all know what comes with telling the truth. You're going to be rejected. You're going to be lied on. You're going to be persecuted. You're going to be attacked. We all know what comes with this. The question is, what are you going to do? The reason why we're saying the things we're saying and we're fighting as hard as we're fighting is to try and demonstrate to the people out there how they've accepted, how they've become complacent with this type of slavery and brainwashing. That's the only thing. That's who Morpheus was in the movie. Hell, I'm already free. I'm already free because of the way that I think. I'm already free. I'm destined for freedom. It was a choice. It was a choice, but there's also a grace. My Christian brothers and sisters would affirm that it was a grace. It was a charity. It was a mercy from God. Yeah. Yeah, but now I'm paying it forward. I'm just trying to get you to understand. And come to just question, why have we accepted this shit? Why have we accepted that the president of the United States could be taken out after a very questionable election, highly questionable election? He could be taken out in a second candidacy before he even gets to be on the ticket? I mean, who would accept this? And you think it's on behalf of you? People have been brainwashed. People have been brainwashed chemically. People have been brainwashed through the airwaves. People have been brainwashed through propaganda. People have been brainwashed through their education, their public education, their college, their higher education. People have been brainwashed by their parents, by their community nonprofits and their nonprofit activists. People have been brainwashed by their boss. People have been brainwashed by their stockholders and shareholders and interlocutors, as Joe Biden would call them, people who are being brainwashed at every turn. And really, they just lack a sense of meaning. They lack a sense of faith. Well, the nationalist populist movement has a profound sense of meaning. We have a profound sense of faith, not only in God, but in this nation and the preservation of this nation, which is why we won't stop fighting, will we? No, we won't. We can't stop fighting. I don't want to hear any of the discouraged, it's all over. I don't want to hear any, get your guns and wait. I don't want to, no, don't be a coward. Stand up. You took the benefits. You took the benefits, and sometimes war comes with it, right? You want to go exploring. You want to go out past the buoy. On Friday, you'll hear a story about me being in Fort Lauderdale and knowing good and well that I don't like open water, but because, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, I thought it'd be wise to take a jet ski out with some of my players. And me and one player tipped the jet ski over, and it was a pretty scary experience. Made it in safely. We swam in, pretty tough swim, which is a caution to all of you out there who think you're badasses. Try swimming in 150 yards from the ocean to the shore. It's a tougher feat than you would expect. But I say that because I don't want to hear your sob stories or your defeatist mentalities. No, no, no. You wanted to venture out beyond the buoy. You wanted to venture out beyond the buoy. You wanted to ride the jet ski. You wanted to have fun. You wanted to take the benefits. Now you got to take the consequences. And the consequences don't have to be doom and gloom. The consequences are now it's time to stand up and fight. You got to risk some of what you have, not all of what you have. Yeah, I mean, we all are risking it all in some ways, but I don't even think the requirement is that you risk everything. Can you join the Republican Party? Can you become a precinct committeeman? Right? Can you protest at the Fed? Can you sit in at the Fed? Can you sit in at some of the big banks who are robbing this country and the taxpayers? Can you sit in at some of the offices there in D.C.? Sit in. Not riot. Rioting kind of shows a lack of temperance, right? Shows a lack of faith. I myself, I like the marches of Jericho, right? With the trumpets. Oh boy, the people in D.C. would hate that. Let's do a Jericho march out there in D.C. I think I'm gonna try and organize that. Nonviolent, peaceful, long, with sustained Jericho march. Let's Jericho. Let's walk through the streets. Let's protest with trumpets. Get the brass instruments out. Let's go old school. Get the trumpets and let's try and bring the walls of Jericho down. And I don't mean bring them down physically. I mean metaphorically, bring down the walls. Because ultimately, this is not out of our control. This is not out of our control because it was not without our consent. And I'm not just talking about people who are 20 to 30. I'm definitely not talking about people who are younger than 20 to 30 because they inherited this psychotic mess. But all you boomers too, with your 401ks, your pensions, you paid into the system, you bought into the scam, and now you want to sit at home and retire. Get out there and do something with yourself before you die. Right your wrongs, repent, wash dishes for 7 years, right? Do your time. Do your time. Don't leave the world this way. Don't die without a set of principles. It's a great Professor Penn said the other day on the podcast. It's never too late to grow a set of principles. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Now, I think many people out there are jerk-offs, and I know you don't like when I say that, but prove me wrong. Do something. Prove me wrong. I would rejoice to see the American people prove me wrong. This is why I said, you're a fucking jerk-off. Now prove me wrong. I had coaches motivate me like that. You know what, Royce? You're fucking awful. That's terrible. If you play like that, you're going to end up at a D3 Baptist Christian community college in little bumfuck Arkansas. Nothing against Arkansas. But as far as basketball goes, the Baptist community colleges in little town Arkansas usually aren't a prospect for big-time basketball, big-time competition. That's where you're going to end up if you play like that. And more importantly, that's where you're going to end up if your mentality continues to produce play like that. And I just go, oh shit, I'm not going to end up there. I don't know. Maybe this motherfucker's lying to me, maybe not. But if there's even a small chance that I'm going to end up there if I keep playing like this, I'm about to change the way that I'm playing because I would much rather opt for the chance to not have to go there than just, tell this guy right here or think, hey, this guy's full of shit. And you got to listen to people who seem to know a little bit more than you, right? What I'm saying is not, original by any means. I'm just echoing people that I've read, people that I've listened to, people that I have conversations with from what I see, what I'm looking at, how I'm viewing it. And how I'm viewing it is this nation is in a dire state. And we need to do something drastic, and we need to do it now. And it starts with you. It starts with each and every one of you. Join the Republican Party, become a precinct committeeman, and get ready for the fight. Stay tuned. We're going to do protests here in Minnesota. We would hope that people come from out of state to participate in some of these protests. We are going to protest at the Fed. We are going to protest against this war that could potentially become nuclear. We already have Russia saying they're going to put nukes in Belarus by the end of the summer. This thing is just getting started, and we have an opportunity. We have a slight window to grab the reins on this entire deal. and I encourage us all to participate in doing so. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by our first sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to fund we have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We all believe in the freedom of movement here at Free People Radio, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you. Tune into the Big Three this weekend on CBS. The games that won't be on CBS will be on YouTube, and you'll get to see me play basketball, which I hope you enjoy. And the Big Three is kicking off, and we look forward to trying to make it past the championship game and finally win a title this year with the Power. Myself, Nancy Lieberman, the great Nancy Lieberman, the great Katino Mobley, Glenn Rice Jr., TJ Klein, and Akil Mitchell, who we added to the team this year. We look to get a win this weekend versus a very, very good three-headed monsters team. I hope you enjoy. And don't forget to go over to The Last Renaissance and subscribe. Subscribe to The Last Renaissance so you can watch the I Flew Here series, which will follow me, a sort of a day in the life around the Big Three and some of the action that's happening there. Very political oriented, but more artistic. It's not a podcast. And that Last Renaissance channel will be the channel where AJ Barker and I's podcast is going to be premiering when that time comes. I hope you enjoy the great AJ Barker on Friday night for our Family and Friends episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week. The fight continues. Don't die a jerk off, and as always, Godspeed.